thank you for joining us. My name is Wendy Anguiano, and I'm a Program Associate for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Training Program here at Equality California. Equality California brings the voices of LGBTQ people and allies to institutions of power in California and across the United States, striving to create a world that is healthy, just, and fully equal for all LGBTQ people. We are here now for our Power Hour on the LGBTQ plus Immigrant Experience. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. As always, if you have any questions, please enter them in the Facebook chat below, and we'll do our very best to get them all answered for you. So now let's get started with tonight's program. I'd like to give our esteemed panel an opportunity to briefly introduce themselves and their organizations. We can start with Adrienne.
Hello, hi, good afternoon. Yes, my name is Adrienne Bambou Diagne, and I work for the U.S. Africa Institute, and we are associated with the organization SALIF, named the Salvadorian American Leadership and Educational Funds, and I work with them on the COVID initiative. And as a past to the present, I work with different organizations like Doctors Without Borders all over the world. I'm a midwife, and I'm a reproductive health specialist. Thank you for having me here for the second time to talk about subjects that are so important to us immigrants here in Los Angeles. Yeah, thank you, Wendy.
Okan? Oh, you're muted.
Here we go. Hello, everyone. It is so nice to be a part of this wonderful event. And thank you so much, Wendy and Equality California, for having me. I am the executive director and the co-founder of the LGBT Asylum Project, which is a San Francisco nonprofit organization that's exclusively dedicated to providing accessible legal representation for LGBTQ plus asylum seekers who are fleeing persecution because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and or HIV status.
Thank you for joining us. Jesus?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jesus Villegas Martinez. I am a volunteer for CHIRLA, which stands for Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. It's a national nonprofit organization that advocates for the immigrant community throughout the USA. I am also a student at CSUN. I'm majoring in theater. I am an actor and producer of an upcoming show called Misfits, Stone Raps. So be on the lookout. And for those who care, I'm a Sagittarius.
Thank you for joining us. Isabel?
Good afternoon. My name is Isabel. I'm a second-time immigrant. We defined 1.8, I was told, generation of Korean in the diaspora. So my first country, which I love and still consider my home, is Brazil. And then in the 80s, I transitioned here to the US solo. And I've been working in the anti-violence movement in this country since then. So it's been quite a few decades of work on the ground with many communities, especially the immigrant community. I've been also with the KRC for the past 6 years as a staff in terms of advancing the immigrant rights movement. And I think the rest and I wanted to open up saying that I come from different experiences. I identify myself as cisgender, so I'm not trying to represent anyone. But my experiences with the hope in today's goal, like sharing what we know from all our experiences and see what we can actually do better in the immigrants' rights movement. So that's my goal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. It's so lovely to be here with all of you today. I'm excited to hear more about the critical work that each of you do in your organizations and what you engage in. So now I'll get us started with a few questions, and we'll be taking questions from the audience as well. So to start, our first question to anyone who wants to answer, today is Immigrant Day of Action, a day where we use our voices collectively to enact change for the nation's immigrants, including California's 11 million immigrants. It's especially critical now as we are slowly coming out of this pandemic. Why is this day and these actions so important?
I guess I can go if that's okay. Well, first off, asylum is a human right, and we are talking about people's lives. They need the visibility that Immigrant Day of Action brings, so the general public realizes that we aren't just political talking points. Immigrants are living, breathing people that need representation, and we've been vilified for the past 4 years, and we aren't just coming out of a pandemic. Actually, we are coming out of a 4-year administration that tried to turn almost half of the country against us. So this is the year that those Americans see that we aren't their enemy. We are their neighbors. We are their doctors, their firefighters. That's why I think this year is especially important to take these actions.
Adrienne, you're on mute.
Specifically, yes, it's very important today. I was saying today is Africa Days. Africa is 55 countries. There are immigrants everywhere, but we know what is happening for us as Black immigrant, African, and women and LGBTQIA communities, as the trauma that we face, people are facing for fleeing, going away and running away from their country due to the persecution that they are facing. Specifically today, with the pandemic, African country are, I can see, for example, my own country, there was a march against the LGBTQIA that I never seen in my life. I'm a certain age and I didn't heard about that when I was living there. For me, as a professional, specifically, I'm a mental health peer-to-peer educator, mental health, adult mental health first aider too. I can see the struggle for the LGBTQIA community, specifically African community, who have been beaten and burned and chased and incarcerated due to their sexual orientation, meaning there is a lot of work to do to change people's mindset and educate them.
Yes, that's very true.
I feel like it's especially really important this day, just because of like us coming through the pandemic, and like a lot of the national assistance that a lot of Americans got, the immigrant communities were excluded from that assistance. So I feel like it's really important to have this day where many of these communities like really rally together and really showcase their voice to like let them know that we are here, regardless if you see us or not. We are not going to be invisible.
I think I can just add that to all that was said. What I have witnessed is terrible abuses anywhere where there is a presence of the LGBTQ community. And in terms of immigrants' rights, I don't see us talking enough or having the intentionality carved into our work to elevate enough the experiences of this population. As an ally, I would like to see more done and not to be on the thrown on the sideways, because we all know about the traumas and the mental health issues and result of the communities and this discrimination and every community that exists around the world. And then U.S. has not, as Okan mentioned, the the walk back on the policies of this country and how that also impact other countries. I grew up seeing violence perpetrated against this community, just like what I saw, violence against women. And I think for us to, in this conversation, maybe more ideas and more ways to address this in our work on day to day.
That's very true. I guess kind of going along with that to the next question, it kind of leads in. According to the UCLA Williams Institute, there's nearly 1 million adult immigrants in the United States that self-identify as LGBTQ. 265,000 are unauthorized and 637,000 are among the adult documented immigrant population. In a survey of young people for DACA, 10% identified as LGBTQ. However, beyond these estimates, not much else is known about the LGBTQ immigrants in the United States. So the US government doesn't track sexual orientation and gender identity in its immigration programs, but should it? And how would we benefit from this type of information gathering?
For me, first of all, I can talk about different rules and regulation and law that has been voted all these days, and I'm kind of surprised for a country that is so advanced like United States to see all the laws have been voted against the LGBTQIA community. Now that I work for the COVID, I say again, I work for the COVID initiative. We know today as an outreach and engagement specialist, what are the limitations and what are the reasons why, for example, we can talk about access to vaccine. First of all, the Black and Brown community are the community who are the most affected by the disparity with the vaccine. But now the LGBTQIA community also is struggling because of the sexual orientation. We have the stigma, first of all, in the medical field, in the health field that exists. Let's talk about, we can go back into the stigma to Black women, right? We know that Black and Brown women are seven times more likely to die during pregnancy and birth. Now, when we add it, LGBTQIA community, with the education and the stigma that we have, is kind of difficult when you ask to people their sexual orientation for them to tell you, because they know maybe that will backfire on them, that will backfire on the community. Even if we are ally and we let them know that there is a confidentiality, well, people will definitely, we know the gossip. We know how people can judge others just because of their appearance. I was talking about that today, this morning, with a lady that is in Africa, in Senegal, who was talking like that about her daughter's friend who doesn't dress the way that she wants her to dress. Meaning, we have to just really go further into the education of the people and push it, because we need to be able to talk about, if we talk about our sexual orientation when we are recording, when we are registering a form on any services that we receive from the government, that we ask your gender, that we ask your ethnic group, that we ask your race. Why we couldn't allow, we have to be able to ask to people their sexual orientation, and they will be free. I think the relief is a relief for the LGBTQ community, and they will talk to us more about the issue they are facing and how we can help them, because they are human beings. We are the same. Like I say, if you strip my skin, I think that we have the same muscle and the same blood, right? That was what I want to share with you today.
Well, I mean, 100% agree. I believe that the government should absolutely track sexual orientation and gender identity, because data always affects government funding too. So LGBTQ plus people have unique needs, and this would help the government be aware of those needs. So that's why I think the government should absolutely track this data.
Those are some good points, yes. Or Jesus and Isabel, you have any comments or?
I think the data can be used, both sides sword, whatever you call. But I agree that what Okan just mentioned, that is important for all communities to address the needs and especially the unique experiences of the trauma, the mental health, but the access to healthcare. And I have many friends of that are trans that stop if you're very young, and the access to the treatments to address their needs are not always available or easy to obtain. And I know that this is all a struggle. For our organization has been just I recall maybe for 4 years at the most that we have included in our questionnaire as we interface community members about their gender orientation. And we put it there to start gathering data. But it is something that both I think many communities of color, but immigrant communities, I don't know about your experience, but the Korean experience has been, of course, we are not a monolith. And we have so much diversity in our own communities. But what is true is also is a very conservative, right-wing mandates of our population that also in the diaspora. What I see is they don't evolve with time, the older generation, and then the acceptance of our LGBTQ members it's really hard. You can pose danger by ousting them or outing them. So we had. We celebrated the first successful same-sex sponsoring for a couple in our agency. I think it was 2018, and we're very happy with the outcome. And yet we had to be so careful about the confidentiality because this person was not out in her community, and it would be dangerous for her and her. Partner who was already in the United States. So for many, many reasons, I think I'm all over the place right now, but the data collection to me, it is important for all the things was mentioned before, but how do we do this and still be being very confidential, but safety of all members of our community?
That was why I hesitated to answer this question, because it was about like the privacy aspect of it. And I do understand that data does speak volumes, especially when it comes to funding. But it's just like, just answering that question on a form is so invasive sometimes. Like I feel like it limits it puts you in a box, it limits who you are. And even like right now, like even answering like if you're of the Latinx community, even like those questions are like separated, like Latinx, like heritage, but then when you go into the other question, your ethnicity or your race is you have to choose between like white, Native American, or like some other, and even in Native Americans always like North American or Alaskan. It's not like the entire diaspora of your indigeneity. And so even with that question itself, even I hesitate to answer. And then adding another question like that pertaining to my sexuality or my gender, that's where I kind of hesitate.
Yeah, and on the other count, I want to just to let you know that the United States is the only country doing that. United States is the only country where we ask you your ethnic group, your ethnicity. When you travel the world, we ask you what country you are from. That's all. You never, you see, there is no race, there is no they will ask you, right? I don't know if Isabel can confirm what I'm saying, but you go to the next door in Canada, they will just ask you when you come at the airport or in a census, they will ask you your country of origin, all right, and your nationality. That's all. And meaning this is something also that is, I think deliberately in this country is separating people from in different groups. It's like, putting yourself in the box. I'm gonna specifically tell you, my daughter is her dad is from Nicaragua. I'm from Senegal. She was born in France. When she's 18 today, when she writes something on the census, when you ask her, she will write other, because she doesn't want us to categorize her in a certain box. And United States is specific for that. And the gender also is the same situation, that you have to expose your gender preference just because they want to know that it's two sides. It can be beneficial, it can be beneficial, but it can be also backfiring, or even on us women, because that help a certain algorithm to categorize you and to put you in a certain category. If I say woman, women, men, Black women, etc., we are going there, and now people will treat me a certain way when I go to the bottom, right? That's what it is.
Yeah. I think this question is a lot more complex, and I'm glad that everybody, we're engaging in that complexity. And I guess that kind of does segue into the next question, in thinking about what are some of the unique challenges facing the LGBTQ immigrant communities, because this intersection here of this community, faces different things.
Well, I guess I can go. Well, there are several challenges facing LGBTQ plus immigrant community. I think the main challenge is that the LGBTQ plus immigrants, especially asylum seekers, are mainly alone in this. The main difference between LGBTQ plus and non-LGBTQ immigrants is that non-LGBTQ immigrants usually do have the emotional and financial support of their families and their own communities. On the other hand, LGBTQ plus immigrants most often don't have this support at all. In fact, their families and their own communities are the ones who want to harm or even sometimes kill them. So I think that's one of the main differences that we see at the LGBT Asylum Project. Sometimes we are the only people that they can talk to, that they can open up to. And the second challenge is, I would say, proving sexuality and their true gender identity. When someone applies for asylum, they have to prove their asylum claim. For example, religion-based asylum applicants do have paperwork or some sort of documentation that show their religion most of the times. However, being LGBTQ plus is not written on any identification documents, especially placed in countries from Myanmar, from Ghana, from Turkey, like that. So I think we as the practitioners need to be very creative in that sense in order to prove our clients' sexuality or true gender. So I think these are the two issues that I can list as main challenges that the LGBTQ plus immigrant community face and that we see at the LGBT Asylum Project.
Well, you are absolutely right. You're absolutely right, because first of all, let's say asylum. To get asylum, you need to prove it, right? Let's say country. I'm talking specifically about Black immigrant, African immigrant, Afro-Latino, African descent. First of all, you have the discrimination from your skin color, right? Then you go to the discrimination from the country of origin, because we know that many of African descent has been people from Haiti. Just let's say some people from Haiti who just has their TPS revoked. Luckily, they get it back, but we have to deport you back to your country when you know that you're in danger to be killed and you are isolated, because it's difficult sometimes to even talk about your sexual orientation. You get onto the stigma, you take onto the judgment of the people, the talk, the abuse and the violence, the homelessness, and the isolation from all part of the world. Now let's go on to also the medical field. Again, same situation where people will judge you, criticize you, rather than helping you, because anybody who's in a medical or social field, normally when you did a Hippocrates oath, you need to serve people no matter their gender, their religion, the ethnic group, the orientation. You serve people is what you the oath was telling and what you're supposed to do, right? But some people, they bring their personal life into the life of the LGBTQ community. That's why we stand. Myself, I know I stand because I said, look, I am a Black woman. I am an African woman. I have been discriminated for being left-handed in a Catholic school. There is always a reason people will find to discriminate you. I was a tomboy. I like to do what guys were doing. There was no girls are doing this, boys are doing that. I was discriminated for a long time, and I have to fight for it to reach who I am today. And the hard time and the time that I was fighting with everybody, but I have to stand up for myself. And today I say I have to stand up for other people because I know in a certain way where they have been true. But if I am not part of the LGBTQIA community, I'm here to help because I know what it is. It's painful, and that's what it is today. And now when we talk about the COVID, we have exactly with the lockdown, people has been locked down for so many times. And the abuse is bigger, is greater, the emotional abuse, the physical, the mental health has been blowing for all direction. And yes, we have to think about it. That's all what we are facing. That's all what the LGBTQIA community is facing today.
Mhm.
No, I totally agree. You mentioned like a lot of like obstacles and hardships that a lot of undocumented people face, and just being discriminated across the board. Just like the thing that really kind of defines being undocumented or an immigrant is like the legal discrimination that and like the limitations you can go and especially just as a simple act of like coming out or like letting your friends and family know like your sexuality, and on top of that you have to like let also like friends or maybe people that work for a school, or you go into an office where like your status needs to be addressed. Like that's another as a consistent coming out. You're like telling people, oh, I'm undocumented, and just getting the courage and like the confidence to get over that. It's its own hurdle in itself. Like for me, like getting over or like finding out my confidence with my sexuality was one thing, but then building that relationship with my status is like a complete different challenge and a whole completely different narrative that I had to go face. And it's just like it is different, and it's that intersectionality that that I feel like a lot of folks who identify as both have to consistently do. And it's hard, but this is why I feel reputation matters, is why maybe we're doing this right here. And I just so we can let people know that they're not alone. And there's that study that you mentioned with the data that there is like 11 million people who are undocumented. And that's a lot of folks. Like, and spreading that knowledge and spreading that data and letting everybody know that there is that many of us here in the US, it is comforting. It's like, okay, well, I'm not the only one. This situation probably happened to someone else. Maybe the person that I'm about to talk to, that I have to disclose my status to, probably already dealt with this. So maybe I feel more at ease, more comfortable being like, yeah, I'm undocumented. Now let's, move forward to whatever I got to do.
And yeah, all these layers of difficulties and challenges. But I'm sorry, I don't know how to make this light come. Oh, my internet is also coming in and out. So I I think we already know when we are working to get our rights as immigrants and be equally treated equally for, and we wanna do this work inclusively, and representation, for all the what you said, Jesus, of course, but also for allyship. What does it really mean about us in terms of all our struggles, to get this right, to get this policy or that passed? And if we don't continue centering our struggle with the most vulnerable, and I think about is across the board, all colors, all communities have this intense discrimination in intra-communities that do not render our community safe to the LGBTQ, and the numbers of young people that are homeless, as you mentioned, Adrienne, earlier, and delegate to poverty, and unsafe conditions, and they're kicked out of their own homes, and I think it will go on and on and on. And when I look at my own country, South Korea, which is colonized, we all know, and for the past 70 years, our brothers and sisters have been divided, and in the guise of protecting our country from the commies or whatnot, is a highly militarized zone, which makes us also very the toxic masculinity that I know is the going rhetoric. And so what does that leave to LGBT communities to feel safe, to find one another? Because, there are, I think, those that are lucky to have their families backing them up and loving them unconditionally. But what about the great majority that suffers intensely the abuses of human rights, in the community, outside the community, everywhere they go? And this is why the groups like the Asylum Project, but also the rest of us, more about the inclusion. How is it gonna look? For years, I've been serving the immigrant community, and eventually I migrated to do immigrants' rights. And the organization I'm part of, before I became a staff, I remember when the Prop 8 was an issue, and then in our own communities was actually people picketing with the signs, the conservative right, to go against this community. And the organization took a stand, knowing that it was risky. And we lost a lot of the base. And I remember board members, we were having a national meeting. And then I remember, was it somebody asking, maybe a couple of maybe about 20 board members asking, was it a smart thing to do? And I just had to say that, if it wasn't that kind of stand the organization took, I would not even be sitting here with you. Because to me, sometimes it's exactly when, it's not the popular vein, path that we always take, but we must continue speaking louder and, and always on the table, always as something intentional, be that inclusion into the workforce, be that in our treatment with each other about, how are you doing your family? Simple as, asking the family members that are from the LGBT community, they do have a family or their, support system. Luckily for, and we need to create more of those safe spaces. And I remember, however, the steps we took is still not enough, because there is also the turnover of the staff. So we need to educate ourselves and each other, we had the API flag groups coming to talk in language with our very great staff, but they don't always come ready-made. So, and I remember two staff that were very young. They're both from the Christian sector, different denominations. At the interview process, I wasn't part of it, but they were asked, how they feel about the LGBT community, and they were not, they didn't know. They were uncomfortable, but they were open enough that we could hire and continue training. And I remember by the time they were leaving, to move on to other positions, they were they were thankful. They were part of this organization that made it possible for them to learn and to respect, to see one another as equal. And so I'll stop now for me.
Oh, no. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's clear that you've had plenty of experience, right? Like you said, decades of experience, and you're bringing this to everyone's attention, right? Like the work that you had been doing before. So thank you for that. To go on to the next question, which actually kind of ties in too. So much like other marginalized groups, the immigrant community is not a monolith, and therefore we don't all share the same experiences. Why is it important to recognize everyone's unique journeys and experiences?
Well, what I definitely want to get to point there is the LGBTQ community that is looking for asylum, they usually cannot go back home in the country where they were born. That's so very a painful situation, knowing that you are not banned in your country because you are a criminal, but you are banned from your country because of your sexual orientation, and you can put yourself in danger, right? Meaning, just by thinking about that, we need to really definitely, for this government that from President Biden, to address the mental well-being of the LGBTQIA community, but make a specifically structure, not to decide what the community wants, but to make sure that we have they are part of they are on the table. They are having their chair and sit at the table for the discussion, not being on the menu, right? We have to have platform where the community will tell us what we do, what they want, how we can help. We always come with the solution. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. But the first step for the government is to allow a platform where people can speak and express all the difficulty or all what they are facing during all those lives. Listen to their stories, because I listen to stories, and not later than this morning, somebody was telling me in my country, if my son is like this, blah, 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 say this and this and this. I say, you know what? The number of young people who has been assaulted by toxic male today, you cannot even know how many there are in a country where we think that everything is nice. But they don't want to talk about it because the family will tell you, don't talk about it, that will be bad for you, right? We know that. Meaning, rather than us trying to find solution, is just really definitely allow the LGBTQIA, the community, to talk, to speak freely. We don't need to have those Facebook nasty messages and telling all this guy. No, we have that already. We swallow it for so many years. We need a real dialogue, clear dialogue, and listening without talking. Thank you.
Well, I think the main reason, it's just my opinion, I think why it's so important to recognize everyone's unique journey is that, so that they can provide the most proper legal representation in their immigration cases. And we can do that for them. So, for example, for LGBTQ plus asylum seekers, we must understand their unique life story, their coming out stories, what brought them here to the US, so that we as practitioners can provide the most proper legal representation, and the immigration officers can make a proper decision on each of these cases without understanding everyone's unique life journey. I think it's just not possible to present those cases to the US government, and the results can be devastating.
Yeah, that's very important too, to keep in mind. Okay, so does anyone else have thoughts on this question, or we can move on to the next one. When it comes to navigating the immigration system, what are some of the unique barriers that LGBTQ immigrants face, and what could our government do in order to help?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah. Dissect it however you like.
I mean, I can just say in the scope of asylum applications, I think there is a 1-year deadline to apply for asylum after applicants' last entry into the United States. And I believe that this 1-year deadline is especially detrimental to LGBTQ plus asylum seekers for multiple reasons. But first, sometimes people need to live in a free society in order to realize that they're gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. And that can take longer than a year. So people miss the deadline. And it's really hard to win your asylum case if you miss your deadline. Second, most people don't realize that being LGBTQ plus can be a reason to stay in the United States through the asylum process. Our sexualities, true genders, is something that LGBTQ plus people kept hidden, especially from our own governments. It can take longer than a year for them to realize that they can tell the US government about their sexuality or gender, and the US government would let them stay here. So both of these points go back to the issue of the 1-year deadline, I think, and this issue was actually addressed in Biden's immigration bill called the US Citizenship Act of 2021, where he proposes getting rid of the 1-year deadline. But this bill has been sitting in Congress since January. So I feel that the president should either issue an executive order to immediately eliminate the 1-year deadline, and Congress must pass that bill as soon as they can.
And I wanted to argue that not only for the LGBTQ asylum seekers, which, you know, like all we talked is also if the alternative, they are not accepted, the rejection rate of asylum cases. And like you said, in 1 year, if decision is not ruled on that person's favor, that person has to leave the country. And so I think, for the safety of those that have the courage or the momentum to come out and identify themselves, I think we should, as immigrant rights advocates, to continue raising that, to not only extend the length of time to adjust the papers, but also the number of the asylum seekers is just so dismal. And of course, under the 45 president, it was, it went down the drain, right? But I think there is much work to do in terms of human rights. And why is it also good for the country that we do advocate for these immigrants and potential immigrants to be in the country, not only enjoying the protection that we, as a law and policies that we should tightening and getting better and better, but also it is kind of a self-interest. We need everyone here as the labor force. Like you mentioned, my own doctor is a gay person, now married to his husband. But what I'm saying is is a part of the fabric of our society. So also because the number of the workers are not enough. And this is not a data that I created. It's the Labor Department or not. So we know we have those data and statistics. So it is in our interest that we do more as a government, and policies. We should push for more.
Well, what I can add, first of all, when I look at the data, I'm sure that we can multiply by 3 or 4 for the numbers, because it's not everybody who is talking about their sexual orientation. We still have young people who are, when you talk about the young people, who are still afraid to talk about their sexual orientation. The other part of it is when we talk about the 1 year deadline. Imagine when you don't live here. Okay, you can find your birth certificate here, right? But imagine you are all overseas and you have to ask to your family that you left because you cannot go back to find the documentation that you need to apply. Now, this is another issue. I have the same thing. I am not from here. I have to ask people overseas for my birth certificate or my daughter's birth certificate. Luckily, I have people around who can do that. But imagine somebody who run away from his country in those conditions, and we limit him to 1 year. If you know, well, yo voy a decir en español porque es lo mismo. If you see what the same system that we have in Africa is the same system we have in Latin America, when you have to get some documentation in Central America, you can run for my daughter's passport. I ran for 8 months to get a passport from Central America. Usually that can take 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 8 months. Imagine now, they have to go to the family. They have to ask to her grandmother if she ever saw my child, if she ever see her, if she know who she is. It was a third passport, not only the first one. Meaning government are changing right now, are strict, and with all this craziness that we have in the world. Now you want to get your own documentation and you are LGBTQ communities, and your parents don't want you, right? You run away and you face this situation. Meaning we need really to extend this process of the 1 year limitation. I agree with you. We need to make sure that if somebody needs anything, there is embassies, U.S. embassies everywhere in the world. I'm sure there is have the support, not only here, but the support overseas to make sure that the people can be served when they need anything. It's a system that we have to create, and the outreach need. We have to have a great outreach and work on the outreach, all of us, to advocate for the asylum seeker, for undocumented, because it's different. The asylum seekers and the undocumented people who are living here, who has to go through another process. And people are saying, oh, it's so easy to get your paper. You're in the United States. You are here for so long. No, they don't know how the system works. Many people don't know. They just judge by anything that they heard, meaning we have to make sure that we work with attorney, we work with the client, we work with people that we know, we make the languages that can facilitate the communication for the people that we want to serve. That's absolutely important. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. I think also something that everyone has been mentioning, or kind of like I've been hearing tidbits of it, but I think it kind of needs to get elaborated on a little bit more, was a question from the audience. Why does it take so long for someone to receive legal status, and what should be done to streamline the immigration process?
Well, exactly. That's a very legitimate question. And one of the steps, meaningful steps this administration must and should take, immediately hire more people to reduce the backlog of asylum cases. There are still cases pending from 2015, 2016, because there's not enough asylum officers to respond to this demand. So I feel like this is a human rights violation here, and this needs to be fixed. President Biden's immigration bill addresses this issue as well. And by providing more funding to hiring more asylum officers to adjudicate these applications. But this bill, again, as I said, has been sitting in Congress since January. So we must pass this bill, and so that these people who have been waiting in this legal limbo and we should provide more funding to reduce the asylum application backlog.
And also with depending on which country you're migrating from, like that puts you on a longer list. So if you're coming from Mexico or maybe some other Latin American countries that you regularly migrate to the US, that puts you on a tremendous long list. And they probably will, hopefully they get to you by a time where you're able to even have enough money left over to pay the extra legal fees after they see your case.
Well, maybe we need just to work on these legal fees and waive those legal fees for the same reason of asylum seekers and LGBTQ who are affected by that. And the second thing, Jesus, you are saying there is a quota by country now for the asylum seeker LGBTQIA. We need to have, I think we definitely need to have a separate category for the LGBTQIA communities without having the quota of the asylum seekers, right, Jesus? Do you think that is something that we need to advocate for?
I think to me this is learning from all of you, sharing what you know, and I also wanna just what crossed my mind is and asking the government, whoever is there. I think about Biden, and although we work hard to elect him, is we who should be guiding not only the policies, the needs of the communities, but also really considering what we are asking for with very sharp analysis of what the impact on the community is. I say this because Biden was also the main author of the 1994 crime bill. And I, as we're talking about communities of color, but also the communities of LGBTQ that have never been saved vis-a-vis the criminal justice system. And as we are pushing for defunding the police and ICE and all this apparatus that hurt our communities, never been for our communities, I wanna to us urge us in this moment to not lose sight of when we ask what are the repercussions and what are the benefits, because I know by experience my LGBTQ friends do not seek the criminal justice system when violence erupt or something happen, and this new bill that passed to protect the attacks on Asians. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't really come through, but if money is put to enforcement and it's carte blanche to continue terrorizing our many communities, that's not okay to, go that venue. That's all I want to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very important to point out, like the nuance, and definitely make it complex. Like there's never a clear-cut issue. So now, thank you everyone for joining. We have now just enough time for each panelist to share any final thoughts. If you have any final thoughts, anything you'd like to say, also please feel free to share your social media handles and other ways that people can reach out to you or your organization if they have any more questions or want to help.
Well, just to finish, I can say we are all in it together. I see Okan, I can say Shnara Kaluchum. Jesus, muchas gracias, merci. And for Isabel, kamsamida, because language are all the way that we can connect together. Muchas gracias a todos. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so sweet. But I think my final thought would be, as you said, yeah, the immigrant community and its supporters, we need to come together and I think, and I'm going to emphasize this again, urge Congress to take action on the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021. And this bill was sent to Congress months ago, and there's still no action. So, and this is wrong. I think they're playing politics with people's lives, and it needs to stop. Let's pass the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021 now, and we can't stop working for LGBTQ plus rights even during a pandemic. And change is never achieved through inaction. And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. I'm a volunteer for CHIRLA. They've helped me so much, especially because I do have DACA, and I have used a lot of their legal services through that process. And they even do have scholarships as well, sometimes to even fund the legal fees when it comes to the DACA legal fees. And they also have a whole bunch of other resources as well. So feel free to check them out. If you want to get in contact with me, my Instagram handle is @undocuspacemonarch. And this will also be on the YouTube platform and many other platforms as well. So feel free to chat with me.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I look forward to more dialogues in our communities.
Yes, thanks everyone for joining. I also am looking forward to more conversations. Goodbye, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.